Friends, welcome to Learning Space. This is the beginning of crash course on CSAT. But please remember two things. One is that we are going to produce only 6 modules in total, no more than 6. And all of them will be only on reading comprehension. There are several reasons for it. First of all, let us know about CSAT. As you know, you have got 80 questions in total and 200 marks. And you have got 2 hours, that is 120 minutes to attempt all the 80 questions. So this is just a qualifying examination and you are supposed to get 1/3 of the allocated marks. So to be able to do that, technically speaking, all you need to do is get 27 correct answers, technically speaking, because this is true only if you don't go wrong with any other answers. So without any wrong answers, if you get 27 answers correct, you will sail through the CSAT. But it is not as easy as it sounds, because you have to end up scoring about 45 to 50 correct answers, considering that you will get about 10 wrong answers. So you will be in absolutely comfortable zone. And the reason for taking up reading comprehension is that one is, there are 3 sections in CSAT. One is quantitative aptitude or mathematics. Another one is logical reasoning. And the third one is the dreaded reading comprehension. If you look at quantitative aptitude, most of the students appearing for UPSC, CSC, CSAT rather, are really comfortable with QA. And vast majority of the students sail through CSAT with their reliance on quantitative aptitude questions. Now, what is the reason? Even if you are from a non-math background, you should still be able to solve those basic questions, because the concepts are what you studied until 10th class, no more than that, the basics. But let me reiterate again. Some of the students feel it really difficult to crack mathematics. I have seen several examples actually. At least this is a mental block, and we cannot make you learn everything within such a short span of time. So it is not possible for us to do a crash course on QA. It will be a deceit from us. We will be fooling ourselves and you as well. Whereas for reading comprehension, you have got several advantages. One is, we can teach you the skills in 6 lectures. Definitely, yes. The reason is that once you know how to approach these questions and you formulate the strategy correctly, apply the steps that are required in answering these questions, then you will end up getting right answer for vast majority of reading comprehension questions, if not all of them. It is highly possible. The reason is that you have got 120 minutes for 80 questions. So 1.5 minutes on an average, if you end up answering all the 80 questions, even then you have 1.5 minutes. The main problem with RC for many aspirants is, one is the question patterns are unfamiliar. Other one is, this is the most common one, basically. The second one, 2 or 3, more than one answer rather, they sound correct to you. So you will end up choosing a wrong one instead of the right one. So it is not just one answer that seems correct to you. So you will be in a bind. If you end up choosing the wrong answer instead of the full marks, you will end up getting the negative 1/4 of the allocated marks. So that is a dangerous scenario. So these 2 things together make several aspirants wary of reading comprehension. But please remember, one thing is that you can allocate more than 1.5 minutes for RC, provided your QA skills are pretty bad, right? But when it comes to logical reasoning, you can apply your logical reasoning skills, as the name itself suggests, and you can solve several of those questions. They are relatively easier. And after that, if you have to answer more questions so that you will end up qualifying, then RC is the only recourse. So that's the reason why we are going for crash course on reading comprehension. If you watch all the 6 modules and take up the questions from 2019 and 2020, What we will be doing is, in this first lecture, I'll teach you the basics. And in the subsequent 5 lectures, I'll take up the most difficult questions from 2020 and 2019 papers and then solve using the concepts that we are going to learn in this lecture. So that way, I hope that you will be able to maximize your skills in answering the RC questions. So let us start with the very basics. If you look at any RC, there will be a set of questions basically, and let us say there are directions given. It will be something like this: directions for the following 5 items, 6 items, 7 items, whatever it is. There are multiple passages accompanied with 1 or more questions each. Look at the directions carefully. The reason why I say reading comprehension is not difficult is that you do not need any extra information other than what is given in the passage itself. You don't need to remember anything, such as, let us say, if you are doing something in QA, you might need to remember a formula, right? But here there is no such thing. And you, being an UPSC aspirants, must have gone through a lot of reading, and that holds you in good stead when answering RC questions, but provided we follow certain criteria. Okay, what does the direction say? Read the following 5 passages and answer the items that follow. Your answers to these items should be based on the passages only. This is very important. You should not bring your outside knowledge, the knowledge, whatever is the information that is not given in the passage is not supposed to be used to answer the questions. Here it is very tempting because most of the passages are on the subjects that you read a lot during your preparation, and you know more than what is given in the passage. Logically, you extend your information beyond what is given in the passage. That is a recipe for disaster. You are being tested on your reading skills, not subject skills. Please remember that. The purpose of RC is to test your reading skills, not at all the subject skills. So look at the passages. They're very short, usually very short. And for the past 3 years or so, we are getting only short passages followed by 1 question and 2 at the most. So several people think that, if I were given a long passage followed by 4 or 5 questions, that would be easier. Definitely, I would say that would be easier because, like a long passage consists of probably 450 or 500 words. But at the end of the day, you're answering 5 questions. That is 100 words per question on an average. But here you have, this is the short passage, but usually we get something like 150 words for 1 question. So that is 50% more than for a long passage. But nevertheless, in a long passage, you have to read the passage first. But here, it is not needed. Let us see why. But before that, let us look at a few sample questions. These are almost all the types of questions that are being asked in CSAT. RC basically, right? One is, which one of the following is best implied in the passage? Or what is the most logical and crucial message conveyed by the passage? And inference that can be made from the above passage. On the basis of the above following, the following assumptions have made, and this is another one, the corollary to the above passage. So these are basically, they cover all the types of questions that you may encounter, you will encounter on CSAT RC. Implied, crucial message, important message, inference. All these 3 are same basically. So 1 type, 2nd type, and 3rd type. Once we understand what is implied or the message conveyed or an inference, in the same way, once you know about the assumption and corollary, then half your task is done. Right. Let us move on to a simple statement here, and let us see how to draw inferences. What is inference? I will draw it, right? Although the government has raised taxes, the tax revenue has dropped. This is a simple statement, right? But read it carefully. Although, so that indicates a contrast, right? The government has raised the taxes, the tax revenue has dropped. So what is usually expected here? If you have to draw an inference, inference is nothing but the unstated conclusion, right? Here there is some evidence given. One thing is the government has raised the taxes. Next is the tax revenue has dropped. And both of these evidences are linked with the contrasting keyword although. So if you look at a possible inference or a possible conclusion you can draw on your own, because here the conclusion is not given, only the statement gives you the evidence, only evidence. If I say that I come to a conclusion based on this statement that a rise in tax usually leads to a rise in tax revenue, is it correct? Yes, definitely. Why so? If you look at although the government has raised the taxes, so in effect what the author is saying that the government has raised the taxes, but unfortunately the tax revenue hasn't increased. So usually it is supposed to be so, and hence this is the correct one. But on the other hand, if I draw an inference that a raise in tax always results in a rise in tax revenue, no, here it did not happen, right? This is an exception. Author himself is saying that this is an exception. It usually happens. So this is a mild word. This is a strong word. So this is in contrast to whatever is stated in the sentence, and hence this is a wrong inference. If you look at another one, it is possible that the tax collections drop when taxes are raised. It is possible. Is it usually the case? No, it is possible because the statement itself tells you that it happened. So it is possible. It may not be happening in majority of the cases. It is not a normal one as per the statement, but it is highly possible. Then this is also correct. And lastly, the tax revenue collections always drop when taxes are raised. That is ridiculous, right? Okay. Although itself tells us that this is an exception rather than the norm. So inference is nothing but from whatever is given to you, we draw a conclusion ourselves. Or in other words, this sentence is implying this and implying this. So both of them are same, but inference is from the viewpoint of the reader, imply is from the viewpoint of the passage or the author, right? That is the only difference. It is an unstated conclusion. Inference is drawn by the reader and the passage or the author implies. Next is, let us look at a longer one here. In a recent press conference, the government promised the citizens of Townby that the new national highway will not pass through existing archaeological heritage sites of Townby, including Site Z. Okay, this is the government's promise to the citizens of Townby. The government said that the proposed new national highway will not pass through the existing archaeological heritage sites of Townby, and that includes, those sites includes Site Z. However, okay, this is something opposite to whatever is stated here. The new highway will pass within a mile of Site Z. So this is not against whatever is stated by the government, right? Okay, it will not pass through it, but it will pass within a mile of Site Z, which is situated at the center of an area, right, rich in archaeological sites, yet to be completely discovered. So you know that there is no conclusion given here, right? So all it is said is government has promised something, but the highway will pass within a mile of Site Z, and Site Z is situated at the center of an area rich in archaeological sites, and those sites are yet to be completely discovered, right? Let us assume for a minute that I draw an inference that the government has broken its promise to the citizens of Townby. Has it broken its promise? No. It clearly said that the highway will not pass through Site Z, and it is not passing through Site Z. It will pass within a mile of Site Z, right? So that is wrong. The government hasn't broken its promise. The citizens of Townby are worried that noise the new highway will generate might discourage tourists from visiting Site Z. Now here, this is probably one of the answers that you will be tempted to choose, right? Because it says within a mile, and there could be, some sort of noise that would discourage tourists. But remember here, is there anything to do with the tourists I mean, the number of tourists who visit this site, is it stated anywhere directly or indirectly in this passage? No. And noise is not a concern at all, right? So whatever is inference given here, it is outside the scope of the passage. So hence this is also wrong. If you look at the last one, unless the national highway plan is changed, undiscovered archaeological sites, yes, site Z is at the center of an area rich in archaeological sites yet to be discovered, right? Until this point, this sounds good. Will possibly be damaged during the highway's construction. Yes, will possibly. So you cannot refute it. There is a possibility that the undiscovered archaeological sites will be damaged. There's a possibility. The statement is not saying that it would happen. But whereas this assumes several things to come to a conclusion, and that is the inference. And hence, the third inference is correct. But the first and second are wrong. If you look at an argument, what is an argument? So whatever we read here is an argument. So usually the passages, the short passages that are given to you in CSAT reading comprehension are indeed arguments. Argument need not be some verbal fight between two people. Argument is nothing but if you take this one, this passage, and if I include this one, the last inference at the end of it. So this is a complete argument, right? Because the passage has talked about the government's promise, and however, there is something happening and that could possibly lead to a damage. So that completes an argument, right? Okay. So what are the functions of an argument? Argument gives you a conclusion by stating some evidence, right? Argument contains stated evidence that is called premise. You don't need to remember this word, but there is an evidence. The evidence here is the new highway will pass within a mile of site Z, which is situated, etc. Is the evidence, the stated evidence, the evidence that is given here. Okay, let's forget about this for a moment, right? Okay, and stated conclusion, right? This one is the stated conclusion. If I add this at the end of this, then this is a complete argument that has evidence, stated evidence, and stated conclusion. But as you know, this argument doesn't contain as such. If I don't include this here, it doesn't contain a conclusion. In such a scenario, you have to draw your own conclusion, and that conclusion is nothing but the inference, right? And I said unstated evidence is also part of the argument, right? Why so? Because you come across, I have already told you, inference and assumption are the most widely asked questions, right? So what is inference? We have already seen. But what is an assumption? Assumption is something that is not stated, but it is also part of the evidence, and that evidence also helps in making the conclusion true, right? If I tell you a simple argument, right? Okay, I say that grapes contain the highest concentration of, let's say kiwi fruit contains the highest concentration of vitamin C among all the fruits. This is my evidence, stated evidence, and that is correct as well, right? Okay, the kiwi fruit contains the highest concentration of vitamin C among all the fruits. Hence, they should be, kiwi fruit should be part of your diet for you to be healthy. So one is the evidence I have stated, kiwi fruit, they have got the highest concentration of vitamin C. But the second one, my conclusion is that you should include kiwi fruits as part of your diet if you want to be healthy. So here there is something else that is not stated by me, but I am assuming that that is true. If that assumption is true, my conclusion is correct. If not, my conclusion is absolutely wrong, right? What are the assumptions that I have made here? One is there is no other source of vitamin C that you are already made part of your diet. Just because kiwi has got highest concentration, it doesn't mean that you must eat kiwi to get vitamin C, first of all, right? That is one assumption I have made, right? You must be going for, Santra, Mosambi or grapes or whatever it is. And another assumption I have made here is that one is only kiwis contain the vitamin C. And another one is that vitamin C has to be part of your diet to be healthy. That's another one. That's easier, right? Okay. And the third one is taking vitamin C is the only way of being healthy. What if you eat a dozen kiwi fruits every day but do nothing else, just sleep and sleep whole day and do no physical exercise and eat balanced food? What happens then? That is wrong. So my argument is very shaky, but I have taken this example to give you an understanding about what is or what are assumptions. So all the assumptions must be true for the argument to be valid. So in an RC question, if you are asked about assumptions, you have to make sure that these assumptions make the conclusion correct, right? So argument contains stated evidence and conclusion, both of which are linked with unstated evidence, which is assumption. So now we know what is inference, what is assumption. Next is, let us look at an example here of assumption. The spotted mole is a rodent that burrows underground and eats all forms of vegetable matter. Okay, this is a rodent that burrows underground and it eats all forms of vegetable matter. Farmers are concerned that this mole could eat some of their commercial fruits planted in above ground planters and bins. One thing is, it burrows underground, it stays there, it lives there, but farmers are concerned that it could eat some of the commercial fruits which are planted above ground. And the farmers need not worry about the mole though, because here author is saying the farmers need not worry about the mole. This is the conclusion, right? Why should they not be worried? Because the reason, throughout the region in which the spotted mole is found, birds of prey such as hawks and falcons are active, and these birds would prey upon the spotted mole if the mole came above the ground at all. Okay, if it lives, in the burrows, there's no problem for the farmers. And if it comes above ground to eat these commercial fruits, so what happens? As per the author, the birds of prey such as hawks and falcons, they're active there and they will kill it and eat it. Therefore, the conclusion, the spotted mole poses no threat to these totally above ground fruits. So this is the final conclusion and this is the stated evidence, right? The conclusion, stated evidence, and obviously there won't be two sentences in a paragraph, right? There will be some additional information as well, right? Now, what is the assumption here? You can think of your own, right? Okay. Here, if the mole, the spotted mole, it comes above ground, whenever it comes above ground, the hawks and falcons, which are, obviously they are the ones that eat mole. This spotted mole is the prey of this one, right? Okay, I mean, these are birds of prey which feast on the spotted mole, which kill them, right? Okay, but what happens if, let us assume that the spotted mole it comes out of the burrows during the night, whereas the hawks and falcons are not active during the night? What happens? Then this is a wrong argument. So let us look at one possible assumption. No other animal could pose as significant a threat to the above ground fruits as could the spotted mole. You know, right? Okay, the farmers are not worried only about spotted mole. We don't know that they're worried only about the spotted mole because it is the only rodent that could pose the problem. No, it is never ever stated in the passage, and you cannot assume that. This is about the relationship between the birds of prey and then the spotted mole. The birds of prey should be able to kill and eat the spotted mole if it comes above ground to eat the above ground planted commercial fruits. Hence, this is wrong. And the times of day the spotted mole feeds are the same as the times of day that the birds of prey are in the air. Definitely. If that coincides, only then whatever stated here is the truth. So this is an assumption. So the unstated conclusion is inference, and then unstated evidence is the assumption. This is actually the case. But what happens unfortunately in CSAT is that sometimes the words inference and then assumption are used interchangeably. But if you know well about both of these at least, then you will be able to answer the questions correctly. Sometimes the line between the distinction between assumption and inference is blurred sometimes. That is unfortunate, but nevertheless, you can still answer the questions correctly. So friends, we'll stop here for today for this lecture, and thank you for watching this video.